These are the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea. Japan incorporated them into its territory in 1895. After World War II, the islands were under the administration of the United States for a time, while being treated as Japanese territory, and today Japan has valid control over the islands. However, in 1971, the Chinese government began making its own assertions about territorial sovereignty over the Senkaku Islands. In recent years, vessels of the China Coast Guard have made repeated incursions into the territorial sea around the islands. In this video, we will see how the Senkaku Islands and the seas around them have been used in the pre-modern period, as well as what sort of problems there are with the Chinese government's unilateral claim. First of all, we will generally review the geography of the islands and their history before the Meiji era. The Senkaku Islands, which are in the East China Sea, are part of Okinawa Prefecture. Okinawa used to be the Ryukyu Kingdom. On the Asian continent, the Ming Dynasty was in power from 1368 to 1644, after which came the Qing Dynasty. The Qing put Taiwan under its control in 1683, but the extent of its rule did not reach the southeastern part of the island. And it is said that when Taiwan Province was established in 1885, the entire island was placed under the Qing's control. The Edo shogunate considered the Ryukyu kingdom, established in 1429, subordinate to Satsuma domain after Satsuma domain sent troops to Ryukyu in 1609. Meanwhile, the Ryukyu kingdom had communication with the Ming and Qing dynasties, had dispatched ships as frequently as every year, with Fuzhou serving as the gateway, and had engaged in trade. When the king of Ryukyu died, China would recognize a successor who demonstrated fealty to the Ming and Qing emperors. At this time, the Ming and Qing emperors would send title-conferring envoys from Fuzhou to Shuri. This vassalage began in 1404, and for the 460 years until 1865, 23 kings were recognized in this manner. For future reference, details of the envoys' missions were kept in the records of the imperial title-conferring envoys. These texts were produced for nearly every mission, beginning with the 1534 mission by the envoy Chen Kan. The record of envoy Chen Kan tells us that 2 ships with a total of 340 people departed on the seasonal summer wind, and that their navigation route passed the islands of Jilongshan, Huapingshan, and Pengjiashan, as well as the Senkaku Islands, Kume Island, the Karama Islands, and finally to the port of Naha. The Ryukyu Kingdom sent tribute to the Ming and Qing emperors along a fixed route at a predetermined time. This practice of delivering tribute was called Chaogong in Chinese. In return, the emperor would bestow silk fabrics and other items as rewards. Their value was great, and they could be sold at a high price at markets, so there was a strong economic incentive to deliver tribute. This framework was called the tributary trade. The Ryukyu kings delivered tribute during the Ming and Qing dynasties, sending tribute 171 times during the Ming dynasty alone. On the other hand, it took decades for one imperial title-conferring envoy to travel from Beijing to Naha. In other words, there were far more journeys from Ryukyu, and the Ryukyuans were much more accustomed to navigating the East China Sea. We will now examine the Chinese government's unilateral claim. Here, in Part 1, we will look at the claim that China first discovered, named, and exploited the Senkaku Islands. There are 3 elements to this unilateral claim. 1. The discovery, naming, and exploitation of the islands. 2. the border between China and Ryukyu, and 3, the border in the sea. The claim references navigation manuals as well as the envoy records produced during the Ming and Qing dynasties. We will examine each point in order. First is the discovery, naming, and exploitation of the islands. The basis of China's claim is that navigation manuals and records of imperial title-conferring envoys produced during the Ming dynasty referred to islands in the Senkaku Islands by their Chinese names. For example, it is claimed that Voyage with a Tailwind, a navigation manual said to have been written in 1403, the 1534 record of the imperial title-conferring envoy to Ryukyu, and the record of messages from Chongshan, an envoy record from 1719, are among the texts that give Chinese names like Daio Yu to islands among the Senkaku Islands, which were passed on the journeys. However, under international law, the discovery of an island or geographical proximity alone does not form the basis for a territorial claim. The navigation manual Voyage with a Tailwind only mentions the method of operating the ship compasses between major points of departure and destinations and the islands along the route, but does not address the matter of where the border lies. In addition, it has been pointed out that the portion concerning the Senkaku Islands was produced no earlier than 1570, thus putting the credibility of China's claim that China had discovered and named the islands by the 14th or 15th century into doubt. Furthermore, this historical record was published in a book in China in 1961, but that book refers to all the Senkaku Islands as the Senkaku Islands of Ryukyu, while the Index of Geographical Names also lists the Senkaku group of islands. Next, the writing of islands' names in imperial envoy records alone does not by any means express the intent to possess those islands as territory. For example, there is a passage in the 1534 record of envoy Chen Kan explaining that the Fujian people did not know the route to Naha by heart, so Ryukyu sent guides for the title-conferring envoys, and they were greatly appreciated upon their arrival in Fuzhou. In the same record, the Ryukyu side stated that they were concerned that the Fujian people did not sufficiently know how to operate the ships, so guides were sent to navigate instead of Fujian sailors, and Chen Kan stated that he was happy about this. Next, we'll examine the border. This is a claim that Kume Island marked the border between Ming and Qing China on one side and Ryukyu on the other. This claim is based on passages in imperial envoy records that Kume Island belonged to Ryukyu and that the Ryukyuan crew members were happy when they returned there. Kume Island is also described as demarking the southwest border of Ryukyu. Gumi-shan refers to present-day Kume Island, while Chi-yu refers to Taisho Island. The Chinese government claims that these islands demark the border between Ryukyu and China. These documents show a recognition that Kume Island belonged to Ryukyu, but there's absolutely no account indicating that the Senkaku Islands farther west belonged to the Ming and Qing dynasties. In fact, 100 Verses from the East, an anthology by imperial title-conferring envoy Zai Kun, says of Jilongshan that beyond here is China, and of Gumi-shan it says that from this island we enter Ryukyu. Also, another piece from the same anthology says that beyond Jilongshan is China. In other words, Gumi-shan is present-day Kume Island and Jilongshan is present-day Keelung, and the record shows a recognition that the islands between Keelung and Kume Island along the sea route, among which are the Senkaku Islands, did not belong to either Ryukyu or the Qing. Moreover, during the Ming dynasty, Taiwan, which is southwest of the Senkakus, did not belong to the Ming. In this time, countries such as Portugal, Spain, and the Netherlands had established ports in Taiwan. Later, the Ming general Zhang Chenggong established a base in Taiwan, from which he resisted the Qing as they conquered most of the Ming territory. Taiwan finally fell to the Qing in 1683. However, Qing governance even then was limited to the western and northeastern parts of Taiwan. The Qing's understanding at that time concerning the extent of their control over Taiwan is also shown in the Qing's official maps. For example, Emperor Kangxi, the fourth Qing emperor, commissioned Jesuit missionaries to conduct a geographical survey. The resulting map, the complete map of the Kangxi reign, is an accurate map of Taiwan. The Maps of China under the Qing dynasty is a geographical text compiled during the Qing dynasty. Within Maps of China under the Qing dynasty is the map of jurisdictional area of Taiwan Prefecture, on which is written, Jilongcheng is the border. Jilongcheng is synonymous with Jilongshan, the name of present-day Keelung. This is described as the boundary of Taiwan Prefecture. In other words, it marks the extent of Qing control. Clearly, Chinese rule did not extend to the Senkaku Islands, which are far away to the northeast. Lastly, we will examine the border in the sea. Well, is there a visible border in the sea? The Chinese claim that there is a border in the sea between the Senkaku Islands and Kume Island, to the west of which is China, and to the east is Ryukyu. China claims that this border is called Hei Shui Guo, and that it refers to the Okinawa Trough. A record of an imperial envoy from 1683 states that beyond Taisho Island and further beyond past Ko, offerings were thrown in the water, gongs were sounded, drums were beat, and soldiers were armed in defense, so the envoy asked what Ko was. He received a reply that it was the border between our land and other lands. Based on this, China claims that this Ko, or what is called Hei Shui Guo or Hei Guo in other sources, is the boundary between China and Ryukyu. However, Che Feng Liu Chao, the envoy's official report to the Qing Emperor of 1683, completely omits any mention of this Ko. Furthermore, the Qi emissary Li Dingyan, who visited Ryukyu in 1800, wrote in the record of an imperial mission to Ryukyu about the following episode. During the voyage, Li asked the Ryukyuan navigator about Hei Shui Guo, but the navigator said that although he had sailed the route back and forth many times, he had never seen Hei Shui Guo or the like. Li wrote, "The Ryukyuans travel once every year and still do not know Hei Guo, so Hei Guo must not exist." Some title-conferring envoy crews probably believed in Hei Shui Guo for religious or cultural reasons, but it is unclear which natural phenomenon they considered to be Hei Shui Guo. The descriptions of Hei Shui Guo differ according to records of the envoys. It is implausible to assert the intention of possessing territory over the Senkaku Islands based on such ambiguous references to Hei Shui Guo. One cannot say there was a border with such a vague understanding of the geography or by observing the appearance of the sea. We can see that this does not in any way establish a territorial claim to the Senkaku Islands. In fact, it was the people of Ryukyu who possessed an accurate geographical understanding of the Senkaku Islands. When imperial title-conferring envoys journeyed from Fuzhou to Naha, they were always guided by a group of professional Ryukyuan navigators. This involved one compass operator and a group of 30 or so skilled mariners coming aboard to help navigate. We also know from Ryukyuan documents that the Ryukyu people possessed an accurate geographical understanding of the Senkaku Islands. This is a Ryukyuan scroll on which the route between Naha and Fuzhou has been drawn. The date of its production is uncertain, but it clearly represents the islands and route between Naha and Fuzhou. Some of the Senkaku Islands are labeled with both Ryukyuan and Chinese names. There are 5 small islands drawn between Uotsuri Island and Kuba Island. We do not know which of the Senkaku Islands these refer to, but there are certainly 5 islands between Uotsuri Island and Kuba Island. There also remains a record showing that when some Ryukyuans were in distress, they could confirm their location when they saw the Senkaku Islands, as well as a document showing that the people of Yonaguni Island had accurate knowledge about the Senkaku Islands. What are we to make of all this? The Senkaku Islands were a landmark for maritime navigation in the East China Sea, and they were uninhabited islands controlled by no state. The historical documents which the Chinese government provides as evidence that the islands were first discovered, named, and exploited by China merely contain written names of islands and descriptions of the sea's appearance, and no writings whatsoever about specific exploitation of the Senkaku Islands. By no means does this alone enable a claim of national sovereignty over the Senkaku Islands.